And with that being said, let me get to our first point in this discussion about relationships. Who we choose to spend our life with is perhaps the most important decision that we can make, because that person will either lift you up or they'll drag you down. Therefore, the criteria that we choose needs to be based on things that truly matter and speak to your soul. Part of the reason so many relationships fail to stand the test of time is because we often choose our friends or romantic partners based on superficial things. What people desire most are things that will change over time, such as a person's height or their weight, their looks, their job, their bank account, and let's not forget how they perform in bed. Like, let's just be honest, a lot of people, for better or for worse, they stay in relationships and they choose relationships based on how a person performs in bed. Let's be honest, if we live to an advanced age, most of us will not look like how we used to look in our prime. If we fall sick to an illness or have a bad accident, or we can be altered for life. None of us can work forever. And with this economy right now, most of us are literally just one bad incident away from having our lives reset. I myself am a living witness to having my life reset. In 2024, I totally walked away from the church and had to find my way. I had to figure out what I was going to do to survive because the money wasn't coming anymore, So I know what it's like to have struggled as an adult and to really reinvent yourself. And it's a hard process. My money didn't and doesn't look the same. My life doesn't look the same. The looks I get from women have changed as my career has changed. What I learned a lot, that a lot of people were simply attracted to my position. They were attracted to my authority. They were attracted to my gift, but they weren't truly attracted to me as a person. And we've all fallen victim to lust. As I said, how many of us have stayed in a relationship or we've chosen a relationship and ignored red flags simply because the person was great in bed? Some of us have stayed in toxic relationships simply because the bills were getting paid and you were able to live a certain lifestyle while you were still suffering spiritually and emotionally. Some of us have stayed even in bad physical relationships where you are abused and you're taken advantage of. But if you want your relationship to be life-giving and not life-draining, it starts with making sure the criteria that you choose aligns with life-giving attributes. I literally was just talking on the phone to one of my friends from work, and she was telling me how, she feels I'm helping her to change. And it's simply because we engage in these conversations about life, about love. We're both single. And when we engage in these conversations, I'm constantly not trying to preach to her, but literally just sharing what I believe and sharing what's inside of me, because I truly believe when we live a spiritual lifestyle, we unlock spiritual events in our own lives. I believe that I walk in peace that surpasses all understanding because my perspective on life is different. I'm not caught up on a lot of things that are happening in this realm because I trust in the Lord. So we have to change our mindsets on how we are choosing our mate. On Pop the Balloon, all the clips that I see is people trying to, like, the host, she asks people after they pop the balloon, and they ask the person who's looking for love, or the person who's being introduced, like, is this your type? And they'll either say yes or no, and most times the response is based on physical attributes. He's not tall enough. The physical attraction just wasn't there at first. Like, these are the types of things that they're saying. It's very shallow. And one thing I had to realize is that the depth that you're searching for in your criteria defines the depth of the person that you are. I'm going to say that again. The depth of the criteria that you're using to find a mate shows how the depth of who you are as a person. So if you're someone who is only caught up on physical looks and physical attributes, that shows that you're really not a deep person, that you're very shallow on the surface. And so the criteria that we need, like I said, they don't have to be a 10 physically, but they should be able to speak life into you. They should be able to handle you with respect and care. They should have good character and integrity. They should be trustworthy. They should be someone who knows how to communicate, someone who's emotionally mature, someone who knows how to show grace and put their pride and ego aside. You see, I've learned from my own experience that time provides the greatest evidence of who a person truly is. We all tend to put our best foot forward during the honeymoon stage. Right? We know the honeymoon stage is like when things are first beginning. We're just getting to know each other. Like we really like each other. You know, we like hanging out with each other and spending time. We like being around each other. But eventually, life is going to happen, and life a lot of times sucks the joy out of relationships. Okay? But most of us rush the process. And here's what I say about rushing the process. We all know some stories of people who got married quickly. Some of them have stood the test of time, and some of them haven't. Now, I actually think this is great because what's taking over the internet right now is a clip of Fantasia and her husband. Fantasia was performing last night for Valentine's Day. Her husband of 11 years got on the stage, and he basically proposed to her again, and gave her a 11 carat piece, diamond, for 1 carat for every year that they've been together. And I've seen it take over my timeline, and people are loving it and things of that nature, which is fine. But what I like about it is the fact that he talked about how they met for like 3 weeks and then they got married. And I think a lot of times when rushing has nothing to do with the amount of time that's spent, but it's how you spend the time. We know some people who got married quickly. Some of them lasted, some of them didn't. For example, the person who got married after 6 months may have spent quality time in deep conversation that sparks the soul and shared moments that are valuable. Whereas the couple who spends 2 years together has had a lot of fun and a lot of sex, but has not dived deep in conversation or been vulnerable with one another. The only thing more time reveals is consistency or the lack thereof. I'm going to say that again. The only thing that more time reveals is consistency or lack thereof. I think that it doesn't matter how much time it is, but it's about the quality of the time that's spent. If you spend time putting on a facade, not truly being and sharing of yourself, establishing a real connection and friendship, you may still stay together, but you will be happy. But will you be happy? That's the question. Will you be happy? And will you feel like when you're actually growing with this person? Does this person make your soul come alive? As a man, society has taught men to pursue. We are the pursuers. We are typically the initiators in pursuing a relationship. And I wasn't always comfortable being myself. I'm just going to be honest. Like growing up, I moved from one place to another in the middle of 6th grade, and having to start all over in a new place where you're the lame person, or you're the person nobody knows, and they already had their friend groups, and here I am coming in, and these people have been going to school together since kindergarten, so it was tough. And there were moments as a child trying to figure it out and grow into myself and learn to love myself. I would fake it, or I would put on a different persona, so to speak, but eventually the cracks will begin to show. I'm glad that now I'm no longer portraying a character. You either love me for who I am or you don't love me, and that's okay. Someone out there is meant for me. Someone out there is meant for you. And that person is not going to ask you to change yourself. That person is not going to ask you to be someone different. They're going to understand your quirks. They're going to understand your history and your experiences and why that has an impact on how you are. So that's what I'm looking for. I pray someone invests the time to see me fully, right? Who falls in love with who I am and not what I am. Fall in love with Payton as a person, not Payton the pastor, right? So from this day forward, I want to challenge us. If you are truly seeking a lasting love, I want you to have those standards, but not standards about how much money he has to make or how tall he is, but have standards about treating you with respect. Have standards about someone who knows how to handle their anger in a healthy way. Have standards about someone who has an outlook on life that mirrors your very own. Have standards that say this is a person that has good character, because when times get hard and the tests come, this person will remain loyal and remain 10 toes down for us, okay? We need to stop with the superficial delusional criteria for your mate. And I promise you, this may not sound good to you, but I promise you, you will be much happier and fulfilled with your life and with your relationships because they're actually based on something that's deep, that actually has roots. So the second aspect for living for lasting relationships is you cannot love anyone without first loving yourself. You can't love what you don't know, and you can't grow without taking inventory of who you are holistically. What does that mean? Most of us desire to find our person. Obviously, that's not for everyone, and with the evolution of our world, there are many people who are on a relationship spectrum, okay? I'm not even going to get into the different types of relationships that are all out here, but I've always been someone who desires to be married, to find my person or my soulmate. These are things that I grew up believing in, having a childish hope and desire to be in a romantic partnership with my soulmate. And as one who grew up in the Christian church or the Christian faith, from the very beginning in Scripture, we are given this scripture in Genesis 2:18. It says, "The Lord God also said, it is not good for the man or for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." And this is in the very beginning when God is creating humanity. And that's really what a better translation of that text would be. It's not good for humanity to be alone. I will make helpers. I will make a helper suitable for them. We are communal creatures. Some of us may like isolation. We might be introverts. We may enjoy time by ourselves, but none of us could live life truly just by ourselves. It would be very difficult to maintain our sanity because our whole DNA makeup as human beings is to be communal creatures, to live in community with others. Not only there, but also in Proverbs 18:22, this is probably one that a lot of us have heard in the church at weddings. It says, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing and obtains favor from the Lord." I grew up believing in these words, and I still do. While there's nothing wrong with having the desire to be in a relationship, having a desire to have a spouse, there's nothing wrong with that. But an issue can arise when we spend our singleness pining to be in relationships without getting to know ourselves, learning ourselves, and loving ourselves. What does it mean about learning yourself? Let me give y'all a personal example. So right now I'm 32 years old. At the age of 29, I got evaluated and found out that I live with bipolar depression, number 2. So I found this out at 29. I'm now 32. So for 3 years now, I have known and been able to maintain my mental health and to basically recalibrate, because this is something that I've lived with my entire life and never knew. The things that I was going through mentally, although it may not have ever shown as far as like erratic behavior, I'm telling you, there were moments where I felt like I was losing my mind. And I just so happened to be married when I found out this information. And I'm currently divorced today. However, the point is that she had to experience some things with me simply because we were unaware of my mental health. There were some highs that came with that, and there were some lows that came with that. And I wish that before I was ever married, that I knew this thing about myself so that I could have addressed it and made sure that it wasn't harmful to my relationship. All of us are broken. You know, that is part of the human condition. Life breaks you. In the church, we call it sin. All of us sin and fall short of the glory. In medical spaces, they may call it disorder, or they may call it a disease or an illness. In Alcoholics Anonymous, they call it a defect, a character defect. But all of us have something. We have scars. We have baggage. We've gone through life. We've gone through some things. And many of us, we look for the comfort to come from another person instead of finding inner peace within ourselves. Instead of addressing the things in our life that could cause us pain. And really grow and heal from our trauma. So I think it's important when you're single. That's one example, but learn as much about yourself as possible. Learn about your mental health and learn about ways that you can maintain your mental health. So if that's journaling, if that's listening to jazz music or a certain type of music, like begin to put these things into practice, because life is going to happen. But if you have a coping mechanism that's healthy, then you find ways to work through that. Okay. You got to learn how to love yourself. And this can be hard too. Again, I'm finding out that I'm living with bipolar disorder. I had to learn to love that part of myself, right? To not just see it as a negative and something to be ashamed of, but I realized like a lot of my intellect comes from the way that my brain is wired. And for better or for worse, like I did very well in school. Like bipolar people, they actually really do well in routine. Eric, you funny, boy. You're funny. That's my guy, Eric. Shout out to him in North Carolina. You are funny, bro. But I definitely was on some like sweetness off a roll bounce or something like that, bro. But it's not a perm though. It's just some stuff that I put in the hair. You throwing me off, boy, but that's funny. But you gotta learn to love yourself, you know, flaws and all. You really do. Because if you can't love yourself, it's impossible for you to fully love somebody else. You have to fully love yourself. You have to fully see yourself. You have to fully value yourself. And understand that if you don't love yourself when you're single, you'll definitely never be able to love yourself while you're in the relationship. Because some of us are going through things that we don't have to go through. Some of us are going through some situations that God says you were never made to go through this. You deserve more. You're better than this. And yet you are holding on to something that is not meant for you. You're holding on to someone who's toxic, or you may be the toxic person because you haven't done the work in your singleness that you really needed to do. So you have to approach it from a holistic approach. You know, does this person's lifestyle mirror my own? The things that I know I like to do and the way I have set up my life, does this person do those very same things? Like, and you can't demand something that you're not first exemplifying yourself. That's the first thing, you know. A lot of us want things, but have we done the very same things that we're asking for? So you can't address what you're unaware of. So we all need to know as much about ourselves as possible so we don't waste opportunities and hurt people in the process. Learn as much about your mental health, address past traumas, face personal shortcomings, and learn from them because it's not fair for the other person to suffer because of our own personal issues. Okay? No matter who you are, we all carry baggage. Some baggage is more easily seen and recognized, while other baggage is more easily hidden and covered up. Take care of your body, whether that's working out, knowing your my chart information. Like, I know you're not going to hear that said in church, okay? But that's the truth of it. I can't tell you, I can tell you, but you don't have to listen. Like, you make your own choices. And if you're going to choose to be sexually active, be responsible. Know what's in your my chart. Check the other person's my chart before you just lay down with them. Like, there are steps to take to be a responsible person, right? Take care of your mind by addressing the mental health issues and past trauma. All right, I kind of already talked about that. But here's the last thing I want to say about mental health. It's not your fault that you have or live with something mental health related. That's not your fault. But what is our fault is when we choose not to do something about it. When we choose to live in denial. When we choose to not lean on our support systems and listen to people who have the experience and are telling you you're not well, you need to go get some help. I had to learn it the hard way that it's strong people who know when to ask for help, but weak people are the ones who try and continue to do it alone, even though we were not made to be like that in life, Loving yourself means that you learn to show grace to yourself. I think we're the hardest critics on ourselves. A lot of times we say things about ourselves that's worse than what anybody can say about us. Maybe not out loud, but inside of our heads. And we have to learn to extend grace, but also take accountability and be honest. And until you do that deep dive on yourself, I don't think that you'll be ready to truly live for a lasting love. It doesn't mean you won't be in decent relationships or have decent connections, but I'm telling you, it probably won't last because you haven't done the deep work that's needed on yourself. This is actually how you ensure that you're equally yoked with your partner. I know for those of us who grew up in the Christian context, you've heard this term frequently when discussing relationships, but what does it actually mean? I think most times we thought it meant that as long as the person believes in Jesus or we're part of the same denomination, that we're good. But I think that that's simply one aspect of it. I think that it means so much more. I now understand that the term means that we're on the same level of thinking as it pertains to the standards we set for ourselves, what we desire out of life, and the maturity that we both have or are growing toward. As I said before, you can't expect something that you're not first showing yourself. We want someone who's trustworthy and vulnerable, but are you a person who is trustworthy and vulnerable? We want someone who communicates with the purpose of understanding, but are you someone who communicates with the purpose of understanding? Being equally yoked means we're on the same team, that we're tied to one another, and both people in the relationship are committing to improving ourselves for us. Shout out to my friend. She's the one who gave me that. I saw that post on Facebook, and it's so true. Both people in the relationship need to be committed to improving themselves for us. Okay? Y'all, I'm almost done. And then we can get to some question and answers or some responses. And I know there may not be a lot of people, and that's fine. But if anyone wants to, I certainly invite you to do that. The last point is understand that sharing your life with someone demands that you display willingness to keep learning your partner. Don't allow pride to ruin your promising future. Guys, I think that this is the hardest one. It is hard. It is hard working on yourself sometimes, but that's only if you don't like the truth. Jesus said it's the truth that sets you free. And sometimes we have to take a truthful look at ourselves in the mirror and see who we really are. You know, you can't grow unless you acknowledge who you are and where you are. But then this is the hardest part, because this is not just, see, the first 2 points were things that needed to be done before you get into the relationship. They help position you to be in a relationship that lasts the test of time. But this is something that happens once you begin to be in relationship. So whether you're talking about the dating stage, being engaged, and the actual marriage, and for those who don't, get married, but the common law, whatever it is, you have to be willing to continue to learn your partner. So for anyone who, like me, has used any online dating platform, I'm sure you can say you've had a good number of matches that went absolutely nowhere. As a man, I've been in a lot of these situations. Like, as I said, men are usually the ones who are seen as the person initiating. So it's like conversation. I have to initiate the conversation. If we're going to go out on a date, like, I have to be the one to lead, and it's very hard, especially when some women, they just don't have good conversation, or they don't know how to hold a conversation. Excuse me. So I've personally had a lot of matches. I wouldn't say I was the number one, but I had a decent amount of matches, and a lot of them went nowhere, And then it's like you get into your first disagreement or your first miscommunication or misunderstanding. And today, because people are lured away by endless options, right? They think that, well, if this one doesn't work out, then I have another one. That's why they have so many matches, right? It's like I'm testing the waters, seeing who is who, which is fine at the beginning stage. But once you find, or once you have that criteria set, once you prayed about what it is that you want in your partner, and once you start seeing these things aligned in the person, I don't understand why we would want to keep holding options. Like, I believe with the young lady that I'm been blessed to get to know so far, that everything I've prayed for, she embodies. Everything that I wanted in a woman, she has. And it's amazing to me. Like, it is sometimes, like, I feel like this is crazy, like, that's actually how it is. But I'm literally seeing it in real time. Like, I have done the work on myself. I've learned to love and appreciate myself, flaws and all. I don't use anything that I've gone through. To make excuses for why I am the way that I am or where I am. Like, I continue to love and accept myself and show grace to myself, because who I was 3 years ago isn't the same person that I am now. And that's true in your relationships as well. Like, over time, people change. Sometimes it's for the better and sometimes it's for the worse. People don't always like the same, the simple stuff, the foods or their type of music or their favorite artists. Like, these things change, but who they are as a person evolves over time. And so you have to be willing every day to seek to understand and get to know that person. Okay. Let me get some things back here because I switched some things. Hey, I'm doing very well. It's so good to have you on here. And I see my dad has popped in. I'm grateful for that as well. Shout outs to all y'all, man. My village, those who support me. I hope you've been getting something good from this message so far. So back to this, like I said, personally, I've been in these situations where, okay, we matched, we may have met up one time or went on a date, and then the first misunderstanding happens, and most times people typically exit stage left. Like, as soon as something happens, they're like, All right, this isn't for me because something is going wrong. And I believe that many people don't have realistic expectations for dating. But if you can't be realistic during the dating stage and the getting to know stage, most often you won't be successful in having a lasting relationship. When you're dating someone, that's you saying, I'm interested in getting to know this person, which means you all don't fully know how a person thinks. You don't know how a person speaks, how they react. It seems that many people bring an expectation that dating means you already know a person, and this is why most dating situations fail in the beginning. There is no grace for us to grow and for us to bump heads. Instead of using uncomfortable moments as teachable moments, hey, Miss McKinney, I'm still waiting on your phone call, by the way. But, that's all in love. I miss you. I hope you're doing well. But instead of using these things as teachable moments, most of us will give up right then and we'll take the easy way out and simply stop trying, because that is the hard part of relationships. I tell my friend all the time that conflict is going to arise because that is part of being in relationship with people. You show me one family that has no altercations or no, times where they get into it. You show me any siblings, and I'm talking about people who are close. They have uncomfortable moments. They have moments where they have misunderstandings and they get into it with one another. You show me any marriage that never has, any bumps in the roads, or they don't get into any arguments like this. That's impossible. But the point is not of trying to stop the conflict from happening, because I tell her it's going to happen. But what matters most to me is how we handle the conflict when it arises. And not simply when it arises, because, I'll be honest, we were in a situation and she sent me something and I didn't understand it. I read it a certain way. She thought she was communicating in a certain way. But because we're still getting to know each other, like we weren't on the same wavelength, and it caused some confusion. It caused some misunderstandings. And I was almost a person who wanted to take the easy way out. I almost was that person who was ready to give up simply because that's what I thought I read, right? But something within me, and this is why even in the moment, you may not handle it the very best way that you can, but it sat with me and it bothered me. And I eventually reached out and we were able to have a conversation and realize that, wow, we have a lot to learn about one another, about the types of words we use. And when we may use the same language, but what we're meaning when we say the same phrase or the same word could be different. We have to realize that we both come from an experience in our past. And I have learned that we all are people we're people that we act based on our experiences. Like, that's just the truth. If you've been in a toxic relationship, you might still have some toxic traits. Hold on. Perfect family can be realistic after Christ Jesus does the work. Yeah, I don't think perfection has ever been the goal. Perfection is not the goal. I don't need a perfect family. I don't need a perfect relationship, because there's nobody who's perfect. So it's not possible. And I don't think Christ tells us that's the goal. The goal is to continue to grow. A righteous man may fall down 7 times, but it's in how he gets up that shows that he's a perfect person. Perfect meaning mature, because that's literally what perfect means in Scripture. It is not like someone who makes no mistakes, because unless you're Jesus, I believe that no one who has walked this earth is perfect and will ever be perfect, but perfect in maturity. And maturity sometimes says, holds itself accountable. Maturity says, I may have messed this up, but I'm going to hold myself accountable by humbling myself and going back. Like Jesus says, if you have a problem with someone and you lay your gift on the altar, leave the altar and go be reconciled to your brother. And some of us need to let go of our own pride and our own ego and our own emotions, because emotions are real things that we feel, but emotions shouldn't define how you look at things. Emotions are a part of it, but I think we need to use our minds and humble yourself, go be reconciled with that person. And that's what I chose to do, you know. And I see I see the comments about a marriage without God and the sinner won't stand. And I'm not going to say that that's correct. You know, I think that it depends on what you believe. And because the truth is, we can look at plenty of marriages that lasted the test of time and they weren't Christians. They weren't religious. Like we can't speak blanket statements on everything, you know, and I used to believe that, you know, but I care less about how you label yourself or the character you say you believe in. I care more about the fruit that you prove. And there are many people who are spiritual who are not Christians. There are many people who are spiritual and may be what we call atheists. But yet and still, compared to some Christians, they show love to their neighbors. They treat people how they want to be treated. They have some of the attributes of Christ, whereas the same people who claim Christ and claim to follow him don't. I got about 5 minutes. I've really gone longer than I wanted to as far as my own message, because I do want to allow people to speak. But I just think you have to going back to this last point, that you got to display a willingness to allow your partner to learn you. There's so much to learn in combining two separate lives together. Like, we have to learn their living habits with shared space. We got to learn their quirks. We got to learn how they respond to life's ups and downs, right? And if you aren't willing to learn your potential partner in the dating stage, chances are you won't be willing to learn them during the actual relationship. So I hope y'all are taking notes. If they're not learning you in the dating stage, then that should show you they're probably not going to have a willingness to learn you in the relationship. The majority of people change over time. Who you first fell in love with most likely won't be the same exact person 5, 10, or even 20 years from when you first get together. But being in a relationship, and especially a marriage, should represent a willingness to learn your partner for the rest of your life. And so that our egos and prides need to take a back seat. Ego says my partner should already know who I am. They should already know this, right? I shouldn't have to say it. You know, that's some of the retorts that I've heard in my own experiences. Like, I shouldn't have to tell you. And it's like, that's pride and ego. Where grace comes in and says, let me help my partner understand me in this moment, in this season, in this circumstance or situation. Pride will always find the reason to make things more difficult than they have to be. I'm sorry, I'm reading these comments and I agree with that. To me, I think you should start off as friends first. I totally agree. Because I may not love you all the time, or it could be different. You know, I may not like you all the time, but at least when you're my friend, like, you know, it makes things a lot easier. Because I'd rather be going through some hard times with my friend, okay? And if I'm being honest, you know, and not to say that it's the other person's fault, but in my experience, like, I haven't allowed myself to befriend someone else. Truly, I think it's important that men and women learn how to be friends with the opposite sex. Okay, I understand there needs to be boundaries if you're married and things of that nature, but definitely while you're a single person, you should know how to just be friends with someone of the opposite sex, and it not be about sex, and it not be about, you know, anything that's inappropriate for what friendship is. You know, I'm so grateful that I have some great female friends that I've never tried to kiss them. I've never tried to touch on them inappropriately. I've never tried to hit on them, and take it further than just friendship. And I love that because it gives me insight into women. That's the main reason, y'all. Like, how can you say you want to love a woman as a man and you don't even understand women at all? And you put no effort into so even the willingness to learn, like you got to have a willingness to learn who it is you say that you want, right? Pride will always find reason to make things more difficult than it needs to be. But humility always opens the door to growth and better understanding. I just shared with y'all that I'm still practicing this. I'm still learning it because it's not always easy to do. Emotions come in and it could be a roller coaster. And I'm just so glad that I was able to see past my pride. And I was able to remind myself of the gift of who this friend is and who she is to me. Okay. So I continue to realize a person, yeah, I appreciate you. I told y'all, man, I got some stuff. I realized like how she interacts with me is based on her past experiences. I can be different, I can show her different, but it's still going to take her time to adjust and relearn how to be in a healthy, life-giving situation. I as a friend must be aware of this and not take things personal. And a lot of us can't get out of our own way. We're with people who've gone through some real things. And instead of being able to show grace and keep that at the forefront of our minds in real time, we allow the enemy to slip in, which is pride, which is ego, which is taking things personal. But when you're actually a friend, then like this person loves me, or this person is on my team. This person doesn't mean me any harm. And a lot of us have negative reactions to accountability because we don't want to grow. Hey. It is what it is. The truth hurts. The truth hurts, okay? Everything we've gone through led us and you and I to this moment. And we just have to be aware that both parties are going through a human experience, okay? We all have a testimony. We're all broken in some way, shape, or form. We all carry some baggage. We all have some healing to do in certain areas. So learning to practice showing grace and seeking understanding is not always easy, but I promise you it will always be worth it. I promise you if you learn to practice these three things, the first two have to do with before you ever get into a relationship. Have your criteria not be superficial, not be shallow, but actually be deep and built on things that build a lasting connection. While you're single, make sure you learn as much about yourself as possible from a holistic standpoint so that you don't have anything that you bring into a relationship that is harmful. At least have a plan of action on how I'm going to address this thing. I'm going to live with bipolar disorder the rest of my life, but guess what? It's not going to define me. It's not going to be in control because I have a plan on how I remain in a healthy state of mind. So whatever it is, the baggage that you have or whatever, make sure you have an action plan to maintain being in a healthy place. And then, of course, gotta have a willingness to learn your partner and to understand them, because that's going to be the greatest gift in keeping your relationship going strong. So I hope you gained something valuable today. I literally went way over the time that I thought this would take. But I agree, or I'm appreciative to all those who rock with me in the comments, those who watched on these different platforms, because you got to start somewhere. And I'm proud of myself for beginning, and I'm proud of the supporters who are here at the beginning. I hope that you'll like, that you'll share, that you'll comment, and I thank those who were active in the comment section. I appreciate you all. I just, again, want to thank y'all for allowing me to share this message, living for lasting love, with you today. If you like what you heard, feel free. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ari. Feel free to join this Zoom now. The link should have been posted. I hope it has been. And if there are any people, feel free to try and join, and I'll try and add you. But the floor is open now for, and let's actually do a hand clap for it. And that's a hand clap for, just this message. I think this message was something that needed to be shared. All right, it's now been posted in the chat on Facebook for sure. I appreciate y'all for listening to the message. But yeah, y'all feel free to join the Zoom. So I'm going to just leave that open for right now. Take me a drink. And shouts out to my dad, I appreciate your support. I really do. I think that last part, especially about learning the people, it's not just about romantic relationships, but learning the people that you do life with, right? And that goes for your families. Like we should know how to interact with certain people, right? If you really know a person, you'll probably know some of their testimony. You'll probably know how they act and respond. Not everybody is mature. Like, let's just be honest. Just because you have your age is a certain number doesn't mean that your maturity is on the same level. Let's just be honest. So you have to use discernment and know how to communicate with certain people. And because that really goes a long way. Communication does you no good if you don't know if what you have to say is not received by another person. Y'all can continue saying stuff in the chat too. I want to make sure I acknowledge everyone. Miss McKinney, Bryn, I feel you, my pops, Eric, Miss Ari. Yeah, I appreciate y'all, man. I really do. All right, now y'all having a side conversation. All right, I'm gonna leave the Zoom room up for just a little bit. I would love if Bryn would come on here and say something. Like click on the link or copy and paste it. Let me see. It also should be in the description of some of my older posts. So explain to us. What's up, T? Thanks for stopping in and showing some support to the podcast. Explain to us what makes a great marriage. Honestly, I think that the things that I said, obviously, I think some of the things that Bryn was saying in the comments as well. Like, I think in my past, I have not, what I haven't done well is cultivated a good friendship. I think that I always led with shallow things, such as a person's looks. And I think a lot of men struggle with that. That's what we talk about most, unfortunately. And I think for a good marriage, like you gotta have friendship, because friendship allows you to stand through the hard times, right? If you don't have that friendship, but you're still in that marriage, trust me, I'm talking from experience. If you don't have that friendship, then it makes things even harder. Because I think once you establish a good friendship, that establishes that you're on the same team, right? Like it's one thing to just Anyone can say the words of the vows of marriage, but the divorce rate is at least at 50%. Okay, so these people, many of us say the vows, but we don't live them out. We're not committed to them. And perhaps that's because we're not actually really friends with that person. So I think being friends is important, being able to be vulnerable. And I'm not saying that you got to tell your spouse all your deepest, darkest secrets, but there shouldn't be things and major things that are hidden away and things that you're still going through. Like if you don't feel comfortable sharing things with your partner, especially in like as you're going through life, then I think that's an indicator that you all aren't as close as you should be. There ought to be a comfort level, a safe space. And that doesn't mean that you won't disappoint the person. That doesn't mean that you won't make them upset or frustrated or sad. But it's not about the emotions, it's about being honest. And if you love that person, you should know how to communicate it in a way that is honest, but that is seasoned with grace, you know. And then don't stop dating. I think you can't stop dating, no matter if you have children, no matter if life gets busy. Like you have to set intentional time for one another. And another reason why I think the young lady that I'm talking to is quite special is because um, she's not like how a lot of people are described online and just like the average person, things that they complain about, which is, I think a lot of times people are using people, right? A woman will only talk to a man if he has a certain amount of money or if he has a certain type of job. And when you get out of using someone and you use your creativity, like for our Valentine's Day, I had originally planned some things, but we ended up having a very low key, like just chill day. You know, I brought her the flowers and some other things, and we just like had dinner. Well, I guess I'll say I had dinner because she didn't really eat, but she cooked though, and it was good. Um, but we did that and tried to watch a little TV, but we were just talking, continuing and deep conversation, and so to be able to do, it's the little things, if a person is just tied into the material things, and but y'all can't enjoy each other just doing simple things, then I don't think that that's built to last. Again, that's just my opinion, but I hope y'all can understand that. Y'all hear Rusty, huh? That's my dog, y'all. He's walking out. Uh, any other questions? Like that was from my dad. I appreciate you. That was a good question. All right, is anyone gonna join this chat? That's the thing. I'm gonna go for a couple more minutes before I shut down the Zoom, and that's okay. I think as more people come, they will be encouraged to just, share, to just share. Oh my God, y'all don't do this to me in the comments, man. Do not do that to me in the comments. But I am not ashamed. Like, I haven't felt this way in a long time. And like I said, last year there was... All right, man. Y'all about to get me to shut this thing off because y'all doing the most. But, there were times when I felt that, I wouldn't find this, and I'm just grateful that, not only for her, but just grateful that, I'm in a space where I can see who she is, and the gravity of who she is, see her fully and can appreciate and respect her and handle her in a way, at least I hope I'm handling her in a way that, uh, how can I say it? It fully equals the value of who she is as a person. You know, that's my main thing. Because I don't want to fumble this. I'm not ashamed to say it. I don't want to fumble this. I want this to last, and I think we're starting on a good foundation, right? Starting on friendship, starting on spending quality time and being vulnerable, and as she says, showing up for one another. That's really all you can do. And I'm glad someone else knows the feeling, and I'm sure. I'm happy that you're in a happy marriage. It seems. I don't see everything obviously, and it's not meant for the world to see. But you are my friend, and um, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for love, because in this world today, we can't have too much of it. It's enough foolishness. It's enough. Yeah, it's enough going on. Like, I'm contemplating the next episode, y'all, being a kind of State of the Union address. Um, President Trump, he does the State of the Union, I believe, on the 24th of February. And our country's in a sad state of affairs. You know what I'm saying? Like, to have grown up and had these types of belief in America, and to see what it has turned into is really disappointing. I'm not simply going to talk about the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, because I know everyone's talking about it, and it deserves attention. It deserves outrage, and it deserves justice. Um, but it's more so the people in charge of our systems. This is why millennials don't trust institutions, because you can put someone like a Trump in office, someone like a Pam Bondi as the attorney general, and some of these Congress persons. See, I don't take sides with Democrat or Republican. I think in many instances there are two sides of the same coin. So there are plenty of them are establishment, for the establishment, and not necessarily for the average working person. So I'm not caught up into all that, but I think that's what our next episode will be. It might be in about 2 weeks, but I might take some time to listen to what he has to say, even though I know it's going to be bullcrap. But I'll be able to use that as something to lean into. So it seems like all hearts and minds are clear. I again want to appreciate everybody. Remember to like, comment, share. Let me read your comment. Another way to have a prosperous marriage and relationship is keeping people out of your business, but being quick to work things out with your partner. Amen. And that's kind of what I said. Like, I don't need to know everything going on. Even your family, like, they're there for you. I think it's our job to cover our partner, to cover our spouse. And so, like, unless it's something, in my opinion, that's inappropriate, such as, you're in trouble, abuse in any way, shape, or form, and you need help, like, that should be the only time. But these are things that you all should only handle in your household. And I think you'll have a lot more peace if you keep people out of your business. So amen to that. Well, this is going to be the end for me, y'all. Like, comment, subscribe, and share Payton's Pulpit, and added me on Facebook. I love y'all. Pray that y'all had a great Valentine's Day, and that love will linger on every day. Valentine's Day is special, but every day should be special. Till the next time.